Hello. Oh, I think it's working. Hey everyone, welcome to Known Day 3. So great to see you all here, and a very special welcome to those of you joining us on the live stream. I'm Grace, one of your hosts. I'm a second year studying law at Exeter College.
Hello, I'm Jonathan. I'm a second year studying history at Magdalen. Welcome to Known Day 3.
So Jonathan surprised me yesterday with a surprise question, which wasn't on the script, so I'm going to get my own back tonight. He doesn't know this is coming. But the talk title tonight is Freed, Imagine a World Where No One Was Afraid. So Jonathan, I wanted to ask you in front of everyone here, what's your biggest fear?
Oh, that's really deep. I only asked you like ice cream flavour. This is my biggest fear. Maybe failure.
Deep. Okay.
I really don't like losing.
Okay.
I have a more light-hearted question for everyone else,
Okay.
if that's all right. We have here the known gnome. We need a name for the known gnome.
That's my biggest fear.
This is your. I thought about calling it Jonty, but in honor of our speaker. But apparently that might be offensive, so I was told. I was actually told not to say that, but I did anyway. So if you have suggestions for what to call the known gnome, please do tell us after.
Awesome. So Jonathan, what's the lineup for tonight?
The lineup for tonight, we got the big man Jonty speaking again, and we're also going to be joined by Damola, who's going to come and give us an interview actually right now. So if we can give her a round of applause, we'll have a chat. Woo. Oh, I forgot the COVID stuff again. Please keep your mask on, please stay socially distanced, and the stewards will direct you out at the end. Great. Now I've stopped getting the dirty looks from the back of the room. How are you?
Good, thank you. Good to be here. Hello, everyone.
Would you like to tell us who you are, what do you do currently?
Indeed. This is a moment where I don't have an existential crisis and remember all these things. So, who I am. My name is Damola. I have currently 3 part-time jobs. I'm a bit of a nutter. One of them is that I work for the Lawyers Christian Fellowship. So there I support Christian students and early career lawyers integrate their faith in their legal work. Alongside that, I work at my church in central London called King's Cross Church. And there my job is to tell people about Jesus. Pretty lit. And then my final job is I work at the Evangelical Alliance, so again, an organization that works around unifying Christians and giving them a voice in public life. So that's me.
Unbelievable. 3 jobs. I can't even
Don't ask me how well I'm doing them, and don't talk to any of my employers about how well this is going, but that's the current state of affairs.
I can't even do 1 degree. Do you pick up the phone sometimes and get confused as to which job you're responding to? Not
quite, but I do sometimes find myself in back-to-back emails across 3 different platforms and thinking this is a bit unsustainable.
Do you have one? Does everything come to one email? And then
No, it doesn't. So I need to. What I try to do is keep the different emails across different browsers, and then I have some sense of where I am and what I'm doing. But it does get messy from time to time.
So Firefox, Microsoft Edge,
yeah. So Safari is one,
your...
and then Chrome is another, and we just switch it around.
Do you add annual leave from each job together?
If I could, I would.
I think that's the only way to do it, surely.
I'd be very happy to pass you on to each of my line managers and see if we can make this a thing. But
I'll have a chat with them after.
Thank you so much.
Tell me about your childhood. Where did you grow up?
Lit. So it's a bit of a varied history. You've probably guessed that I've got a somewhat ambiguous accent. I am Nigerian. I was born in London. I was raised...
I'm not meant to show favoritism, but...
But lit. I'm happy to be here with a brother. We're all family, but Nigerian, born in London, raised in Ireland, south of Ireland, and then post-uni moved to Belfast, Northern Ireland. So I've got a mixed Irish twang going on, and then moved back to London about 3 years ago to do the bar. My background is law. That's why I've studied. That's the line that I've gone down, and that's a bit about my geographic history also. Yeah.
Law. Solicitor, barrister?
Barrister. So it's probably somewhat evident that I quite like to speak. So I went for the stand in front of a judge and argue your case vibe on the lawyerly front. So I was trained I'm part qualified as a barrister.
Is that nerve-wracking, having to stand in front of a judge and say...
Properly. Yeah. But you build up stamina for it as you go along. It also helps if you know your stuff. That's always handy, and a bit disastrous if not, but will not draw too much attention to those moments.
Sounds like a tutorial. If you know your stuff, it's all right.
Yeah.
How would you say you grew up in a Christian background?
I did indeed.
And you said you've been a believer throughout your youth and into adult life. How has that impacted your work, would you say?
Yeah, fascinating. Both my parents had distinct experiences of coming to know and follow Jesus, and that's had a massive impact on me growing up. So my father's a convert from Islam, and that was a pretty costly decision for him to make in his teens when he was still fully dependent on his father for support, but he came to know something in Jesus that was worth facing a lot of backlash for, and that set the scene for some of my life. And then my mom too was raised in a nominally Christian household, but there came a point where she was, met face to face with Jesus and could not but follow him. So they both decided to be Christian, and that meant me growing up was in church a minimum of 3 times a week. I thought it was a bit of a joke, but it's worked out now, so it's all good. So I guess I've always had an awareness of God, and the story of the Bible has always made sense to me, and I've been able to map on the reality of who I am in light of it. So it's never taken me by surprise that I'm a sinner. That's actually been something quite apparent for me to reckon with. But what's also been huge for me is the grace, the love, the kindness that God's extended to me in Jesus, and how that maps on to law. That's a good question. I guess the sense of vocation and getting to partner with God in the work that I do. So, I'm going to get a bit deep somewhat quickly. But I guess one of the core things I believe as a Christian is that God is intensely invested and involved in his world. So he doesn't just sit back as creator, sipping lattes all day and watching chaos ensue on the face of the earth. But in his creation of the world, in his sending of his son to redeem the world and bring the world back to himself, and in the ultimate trajectory of the story of the world, which from the last book of the Bible, I understand to be the renewal of all things, so that our present experience will one day culminate in, for those who know Jesus, getting to live with him on the earth in a renewed city, living life as we were made to live. And that future, that hope, gives me an eternal context for the work that I do now in law. So I don't just rail against injustice, though I do. I find it grievous and offensive personally, but I have the context of the story of God to locate it in. And so I get to name injustice because of the truth of who God is and what I uncover of his character and his nature in Scripture, and what I understand of how things have gone wrong as humans have turned away from him. But I also have a sense of his redemption, his continued investment in the world, and the place and the meaning of my work and efforts for justice. That justice and the victory that Jesus has won on the cross, that is the ultimate direction of travel for everything. And in some way, my small efforts towards justice can be part of that. So that definitely gives me hope. There's it's hard to work for justice. I've only experienced a little of it so far, but those who are more experienced say it's actually quite heart-wrenching to come face to face with the tragedies on the face of the earth and to be seeking a better future. And there's nothing like having hope in Jesus for motivating that work personally.
And I'm sure that you do humanitarian law. So
human rights law, yeah.
There's a lot of that, this idea of justice involved in your work.
Indeed, yeah. And I guess there's justice is implicated in all of law, but in human rights law, you get to see some of the very worst of the worst. Shocking crimes against who we are as human beings, and that raises questions of, well, then who are we as human beings? Why is injustice so offensive? What is it that gives value to the human life and human person? And personally as a Christian, I've not found, not even as a Christian, just as a person, I have not found any rationale as compelling and as fruitful in pursuit of justice, and for why human beings are worthy of dignity, why they bear inherent value, as I have in the Christian doctrine of being made in the image of God. And not just being made in the image of God, but that God saw it fit to have the blood of his son be shed to buy back humanity. Like, that just speaks to infinite value, a value that's bestowed on us by God. And it speaks to all of us, having that value equally. And I've not come across another rationale, another framework for understanding the worth of human life quite as fruitful as that.
Wow. Wow. In your work, you talked about how obviously a lot of it's to do with justice, and human rights law is particularly to do with justice. In terms of racial justice or racial injustice, we were talking about this briefly at dinner, how does that kind of fit in with your faith, and how has that become a larger part of your role over the past year?
Yeah, indeed. Since George Floyd was murdered last year, I've been drafted into a semi-race relations expert role, which I never signed up for, so it's been a bit of an interesting one to sit into. And just as a disclaimer, I'm not a race relations expert, so sorry if that's what you came for, it's not what you're getting right now. But I am a person, I experience racial injustice, but also I guess I need to make sense of it in light of my faith, in light of my background, in light of the experiences of those around me. And I guess I'm not really sure what your initial question is anymore, but I'm just going to keep speaking and you can pull me back in.
You just keep going.
Again, I find my faith really helpful here in giving me a framework for why racial injustice is so heinous. And it's injustice against individual humans, but it's also a crime against God. Because God is the one who holds all of human life, who is the possessor of life on the face of the earth. And actually, racial injustice is in the first instance an offense against him. And having that cosmic level language, I've just found so liberating to know that racial injustice isn't wrong only because of my felt experience or the felt experience of those who have a similar ethnicity or background or origin to myself. But it actually goes against the very way in which the maker of heaven and earth ordered for people to live, the kind of life that he saw and desired for his creation. So just knowing that's the gravity of what's at stake is something of the very nature and character of God. I find that liberating. I find in the language of sin a really helpful, understanding language to name the travesty of injustice. And again, it's rebellion, it's moving away from all that's good, all that is God, and that just unleashing chaos on the face of the earth. And racial injustice is but one manifestation of that. And I do find it potent to name it, so we don't just deal with we could, but it would lead to imprecision to just say, you know what, it's just one of a number of sins, so why address it in particular? But actually we do see specific language around sin and wrongdoing and the fallout of human rebellion in Scripture, and that's helpful. It helps us be precise about what's gone wrong, but also helps us be precise about how we might seek a remedy and how we might find a way forward. In biblical framework, biblical understanding, find it hugely helpful when it comes to racism. And I guess an understanding that racism must be countered. I must do all that I can to counter it. Hopefully all of those hopefully most people think that. And in particular, if someone's a follower of Jesus, it's particularly incumbent upon them to counter racial injustice, again, as part of their life with Jesus. I guess also a sense in which, while I must seek to work against racial injustice, I know that in my experience of life as it currently is, it will always be a facet of my experience. It will always be a facet of the experience of people who suffer racial injustice and from ethnic minority backgrounds and whatnot. And that's a really sobering thing to live with. But I think it clarifies some of the search and the quest for justice. Seeking total justice in this world as we experience it, as we know it, often leads to more injustice. It's a really weird thing, but not having the right framework for what is and what should be means that we're seeking something that this world just isn't made to give us of its own. And yet, because I know that, like, God is just, there will be an ultimate reckoning with all of injustice, and that's in his hands. Again, I can expend myself in my work for justice. I can have a place to go with the disappointments along the way, but I can also have an ultimate hope and confidence that, God will make all things new. This will not always be part and parcel of what it is to be a human being. Actually, as I find life in Jesus, he will bring me and all those who trust in him to a point where we get to experience for the first time what it is to be truly, fully human, what it is to be fully alive. And that's hope that's worth continuing on in the face of injustice for.
And I guess, just finally...
Sorry, I've given some really long answers.
That's all right. It's been a deep session already.
Aye.
My deepest fears.
Indeed, right. We started at the deep end, and so we've continued on in that same vein.
It's a long way from the known.
Indeed it is.
Working as a lawyer, justice is obviously a large part of your work. How does then forgiveness, something which we don't tend to think of as something that's related to the law, what joy can we get from the idea of forgiveness in the Bible?
Yeah, forgiveness is a bit of a tricky one in the context of justice and injustice. And I guess particularly around racial injustice, it's been one I've been thinking about a fair bit over the course of the year. So it's a bit easier to get your heads around injustice on a personal level and what forgiveness might look like in that context. And then it's just, a bit harder to work out on a systemic level when it comes to wrongs that are perpetrated corporately against other people corporately. How does any of this stuff find teeth in that context? And I guess what I have at the moment is a bit of a differentiation between forgiveness and reconciliation, and what repentance or acknowledging wrong and like turning away from it, what role that has in the midst of them. And I think in terms of like reconciliation between people groups and humans, that there must be repentance, there must be an acknowledgement of wrong for humans to join together in relationship properly, and actually without that, that's just a stumbling block. And so like we can see in truth and reconciliation projects that have happened around like on the aftermath of genocide or apartheid, that even if there isn't like punishment, it's still wrong must be acknowledged and right relationship can't proceed until that's happened. So repentance and reconciliation go together, and that's true of the story of God. But also, I guess I must grapple with the fact that forgiveness can and often should precede repentance. So I have a duty to forgive people who wrong me, even before they've acknowledged that they've wronged me. And just if that strikes you as like really strange or difficult, I totally hear that, because it strikes me as such too. And yet the reason I say that and hold to it is because in the lavish, extraordinary grace and forgiveness I've known in Jesus, there is no injustice that I will suffer or that I will see perpetrated that will compare to the extent of my wrong before God and the extent of the grace that he's shown me in bringing me back to himself in the midst of it. And so as heinous, as grievous, as painful as injustice is in this world, nothing that I'll suffer compares to how I've wronged God, and there's nothing that will be requested of me that his love and kindness doesn't subsume over it again and again and again and again. And I guess for me, it's bearing in mind the knowledge of how loved I have been, how much grace has been shown to me. Everything else I suffer will always pale in comparison and significance. And so to fully inhabit the kindness that God has shown me in Jesus, as I seek to make sense of the way that things are, whilst also, encouraging people towards repentance in loads of different forms. Like, so first in terms of their relationship with God and Jesus, but also the knock-ons of that in relationships with other human beings. Like, these things, they work together. And yet having a level of separation in how I understand that, I guess, just helps me maintain joy in my relationship with Jesus. Like, because of what he's done, I can face the challenges, the uncertainties of life, because his sacrifice will always be sufficient, no matter how messed up, hard to understand things are. The love that flows from the cross is super abundant in supply, and I can find my life in that, and make sense of the day-to-day in the light of what Jesus has done, and what his word makes clear that he's going to do. He's the one who makes all things new. Once again, that's where the joy comes from, and the reality of who he is, and finding my life again and again and again in that.
Yeah, it's a beautiful picture, and the potency of grace. Grace covers all injustices.
Amen.
Let's give Damola a big thank you. And I will hand over to Grace and Jonty.
Thank you so much, Damola. That was awesome. So powerful and, really impactful. Thank you for sharing that. So, Jonty, you're our speaker this evening.
Yes.
So let's get to know you a little bit. I've got a few questions for you.
Oh, great.
So, first question. If you could be in the Guinness World Book of Records for one thing, what would that one thing be and why?
It strikes me that the Guinness Book of Records, there are some things that have really take quite a lot of effort. There's a lot of them that you think that would be hard work. I'm not interested in any of those. It would need to be one of those ones that basically no one's ever done it before. Because it strikes me that I've probably broken a number of world records in my life. And I think that's the key. The key is just to find something that no one has ever done before, do it, and then not tell anyone. And then just to have that wonderful, warm sense of being a record breaker. I think that's what I would do.
I like that. So maybe something really random, quite rogue. Yeah, I like that. That's cool. So second question. You were a student here in Oxford, did chemistry at Lincoln College.
Yes.
So if you could go back in time and redo your life as a student here, what would you do differently and why would that be?
What would I do differently? I'm not sure I'd do as much rowing. I went for a walk this morning along the river, and there were people out rowing, and it kind of brought back this fear, it was, the early morning, they get up at 6. Anyone here, right, anyone got up at 6 this morning to go rowing? Yes. You see? That's what I wouldn't do anymore. I did a lot of that. And by the time you get to 9 o'clock and you turn up at your first lecture, you feel like you've already done a day's work. You're exhausted already. So maybe I'd tell myself, chill out. Sleep is good.
I think that's good advice. So
on a more serious note, I also think I would make more of an opportunity to explore different ideas and thoughts. Because the biggest thing I realized when I stopped being a student was, whoa, hang on a second, where did all my time go? I remember getting my first job and them saying you get like 4 weeks annual leave. I was like, you get what? Is that include? Does that? And then you obviously 3 months in the summer. I mean, that's just taken, right? And it suddenly dawned on me how much time I had. And there was a mate that I used to go to the pub with, and we used to talk about issues about Jesus and about God and about the Bible and these huge questions of life. And we used to go and do that like 2 or 3 times a week. We used to love it. And then as soon as I stopped being a student, I had no time. And I think, that is so precious.
Yeah, I love that. Thanks, Jonty. So you're not in Oxford anymore.
No.
Where do you live now? And yeah, what's it like?
I live in central London. I live just behind the Tate Modern. Shakespeare's Globes at the end of my street. In fact, we went to see a play at Shakespeare. This makes me sound very highbrow. I'm really not. We went to see a play at Shakespeare's Globe Theatre. And at the interval, my wife went to the loo, and the queues for the loo were quite big, so she popped home, used the loo at home and came back, which made us feel like proper, like, Londoners. I love Central. I love Oxford. I love Central London. I love the diversity. I love the life. I love the variety. I love the energy. It's exhausting. I'm one of those annoying Londoners who, when you get tourists slowly ambling along the South Bank, you can get out of the way. I'm one of the people who make others say that London's not very friendly. But it's just a wonderful, wonderful place to be, with so many opportunities and galleries and love it.
Awesome. Thanks, Jonty. So Jonty's going to speak to us tonight from the talk title, Freed. Imagine a world where no one was afraid. So yeah, over to you, Jonty. Take it away.
Great. Okay, let's get into this, all right? I want to ask you to help me out tonight. Whether you've come kind of with questions, whether you've been dragged along, whether you're watching on the live stream, I want us to engage tonight. Okay, I really want to try and engage your minds, but let me be honest with you, I also want to try and engage your heart. I want to try and show you something which I think is spectacularly beautiful. And if it's true, it is the best news you will ever hear. Genuinely, it is the best news you will ever hear. So I'm going to ask you, just for the next 25 minutes, that sort of length, who knows, to engage with this and to listen and to ask yourself, is this true? Is this beautiful? And we're going to start. I just want to take you through a story that you find about Jesus. This is John's Gospel. If you've got one of these near you, I'd love you to turn to it. And we're going to turn to page 70 in these Gospels. This is John chapter 11. So page 70. And I'm going to do what you should never do with a story. We're going to start at the end. I'm going to tell you what happened. We're going to look at the last sentence of this story. And then I'm going to show you why it's so remarkable. So if you've got one of these in front of you, then have a look at this. If you haven't, then don't worry about it. Just listen. I'm going to read from verse 43 on page 70. John chapter 11, verse 43. It says this: when he'd said this, Jesus called out in a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out." The dead man came out. What a statement. I mean, if that doesn't surprise you, it's because you've been around in churches for too long, or you I don't know why, that the dead man came out. His hands and feet wrapped with strips of linen and a cloth around his face. Jesus said to them, "Take off the grave clothes and let him go." That's where I want to start. Can you picture that scene? Let me just fill in the backstory for you. This man Lazarus is one of Jesus' good friends. He's got 2 sisters, Mary and Martha. Lazarus was sick. They called for Jesus to come. He delayed for a bit, but then he came. But as Jesus traveled to their house, this man Lazarus died. It was a pretty decent long journey. And this man Lazarus has been dead for 4 days. And as Jesus comes to the tomb, as he comes to the funeral, the first person he meets is his sister Martha. And Martha says to him, "Oh, Lord, if you'd been here, my brother wouldn't have died. If only you'd been here." And then Jesus travels on, and then he meets Mary, the second sister, and she says to him, "Oh, Lord, if only you'd been here, my brother wouldn't have died, but he's dead." And then Jesus gets to the grave, and he says, "Roll away the stone." And it causes a bit of embarrassment. I mean, this is not what you do at a funeral, okay? And they say, "But he's been dead 4 days. He's going to stink." But Jesus says, "Roll it away." So they roll back the stone, and Jesus stands, and he looks into the darkness of death, the darkness of the tomb, and he says, "Lazarus, come out." And the dead man came out. And then Jesus said to those around, "We'll take off his grave clothes." So he's still wrapped in the strips of linen that they wrapped him in, as they did with dead bodies. And they said, "Take the clothes off him and let him go." Here is a story that moves from death to life. I want you to see the shape of the story. It is from death. It goes, a story that goes, Lazarus is sick, he goes down into death, and then life. That's the shape. It's a tick shape. It is the shape of Nike, right? The swoosh. It is down and then it's a brilliant shape. But our problem as we read that story is you go, but that doesn't happen. Life isn't tick-shaped. Everybody knows that, and that's why we read that story. And if you've come across this for the first time, or if you're new to this stuff, you will read that story and go, that's not true. Because that doesn't happen. You see, life is not this shaped. Life does not go from death to life. All of us know that life has a different shape. Life goes from life to death. It's not a swoosh, it's a That's your experience of life, right? Now, there's a reason why Nike chose that rather than because this shape isn't nearly as attractive. And yet that is the shape of life in this world. But what if what happened at that moment, at that tomb, in that garden, with that corpse, what if in that moment Jesus was showing us something better? You see, Jesus in that moment undoes death. He reverses death. He moves Lazarus in the opposite direction from death to life. And if Jesus were able to do that for Lazarus, what if Jesus were able to do that for you? You see, these two shapes, the swoosh and the rue, these two shapes take you to the very heart of what the message of Christianity is all about. So let me explain to you why we get so excited about Jesus. We've heard Damola tonight talk so passionately about why Jesus matters so much to her. Why? Why does it matter so much? Well, because of these two shapes. Let me show you. Let's take the life to death shape first. Let's think about that as the reality of our lived experience in this world. And I want to show you three things about this life to death. The first is that it's painful. It sucks. It spoils everything. The fact that everything moves this direction is so frustrating. Everything's decaying. Everything is dying. When I buy fruit from the supermarket because I want to be healthy and then I don't eat it because that's what really happens in life, that fruit becomes increasingly decayed. You know this. This is what, as a chemist, when I studied chemistry, this is what's the second law of thermodynamics. There you go. A little bit of chemistry for us all. Entropy. Everything tends towards disorder. If you want to understand the second law of thermodynamics, just look at your kitchen. Everything tends towards mess and disorder. Things do not go from being disordered to order. They go this way, down. You have to put energy in to move things uphill. You have to put energy in to go from a messy kitchen to a clean kitchen, because that's the direction it happens. And it's so frustrating because we love stuff that's new, but it doesn't stay new. So I bought a new bike a little while ago, went to Halfords, bought a new bike. So annoying, Halfords, because you have to go upstairs. The bike bit is always upstairs, and they have to carry it. Anyway, so I bought this, but I was very excited about my new bike. It was all new, it was shiny. I love new stuff. Everyone loves new stuff, right? And I got my bike, and everything was clean and new, and it smelled new, and I don't know why I was smelling it, but it still had tires. It still had tires. It had tires, but it still had the little black sticky out bits because they're brand new tires. And I got on my bike and I rode it around the Halfords car park, and I was so excited. And then I got back to Halfords front door, and do you know what I thought to myself? It's not new anymore. That's it. It's on its way down. And that bike is now rusty, sitting in my shed, unridden. Because that's what happens, right? We crave what is new. We love what is new. So here I am. I get my new phone, right? I get a new phone. I'm so excited about this new phone. They say you have to take out a 2-year contract. 2-year contract? Of course I'll take it. I'm never going to fall out of love with this phone. It's the greatest phone on earth. I'll take a 10-year contract. I just want this phone. And you get your phone, and it's so new, and it's an iPhone. I don't know what we're on. iPhone. I'm still on iPhone 6, I think. I don't know what I'm on. But, iPhone 12. And you love it. And then suddenly you notice over here an advert for an iPhone 13. They're very unlikely to make an iPhone 13. It doesn't have a good ring, does it? But anyway, it doesn't matter. So iPhone, the next iPhone, and suddenly you look at yours and you go, oh, iPhone, you're not quite as good as I thought you were. And by the end of 2 years, you hate your phone. You stupid phone. When can I ditch you? When can I get rid of you and get a new one? Because we crave new. We want what is new. And that is what makes this shape so difficult and so frustrating and so painful. And those are superficial and stupid examples. But you all know that that is true in the more painful realities of life. That life has this shape. And yeah, there is this little bit of life when it's good, and life is good, and you're young, and you're healthy, and you're fit, but then you begin to get older, and you begin to decay. Look, I am dying right now. In front of your very eyes, I am dying. Slowly. Do you not see that's where everything heads? And it spoils things. And so this shape is painful, but it's not just painful, it's also a slavery. You see, it enslaves us. Because just like all of us, well, most of us, have tried to run up a down escalator. Come on, we've all done that, right? That is what humanity spends its life trying to do. Here we are on this trajectory from life downwards to death. We're on this downward trajectory, but humanity spends most of our lives desperately trying to run back up the hill, trying to say, no death, I will defeat you. And we spend money on creams and we go to the gym and we try to get fit and we eat more healthily as you get older and you realize that it's coming and you're trying to run uphill, but it's a slavery. You know, there's an extraordinary book in the Bible called Ecclesiastes. In the book of Ecclesiastes, but this is genuinely in the Bible, it says, meaningless, meaningless, utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless. It's bleak, isn't it? That is a book that's trying to express this frustration, this slavery of heading down. It's so hard. And the older you get, and you don't know this yet because you're still young, but the older you get, the faster time seems to go. And the faster time seems to go, the more panicked you start to be as you realize you're running out of time. And there's a slavery to it. And that's ultimately where this man Lazarus ends up in the grave. He ends up enslaved. He ends up trapped by death. So it's painful and it's slavery. But thirdly, and I want to show you this clearly because you need to know this in order for it to make sense of what's coming next. The Bible also, look, you might say to me, okay, fine. Just get over it. Yes, we're all going to die. Get over it. That's just the way things are. You know, Disney taught us, if Disney's taught us nothing, it's taught us it's the circle of life. From the day you arrive on this planet and blinking step into the sun. There's far too much to take in, too many things to be done. I don't know. But it's the circle of life. Get over it. You die, then you become grass, and then the antelope eat the grass, and then the lions eat the antelope, and then the lions die, and they become grass. That's how it works. Death is just natural. I've got to tell you, the Bible says it's not. And I think most of us who've experienced death know that it's not. It doesn't feel natural, does it? Do you not find that death feels like some intruder, some enemy to be avoided, some disaster to be run away from? I really don't want to be too heavy, but I want to try and be real with you. I once had to take the funeral of a 3-month-old baby, and their body was brought in a tiny little coffin. Do you think there was anything in me that was saying, well, look, this is just the circle of life, isn't it? It's just what happened. Little Grace had a genetic disorder. So actually, it's better that she died because she would have weakened the gene pool. This is evolution in action, right? This is the survival of the fittest. No, instead at that funeral, we wept and we raged against death. And we said, death, how dare you? Death feels like an enemy. And death feels like something that is wrong with our world. This is not right. Death is not right. And the Bible says, no, absolutely, death is not right. Because the third thing you need to know about death is, yes, it's painful, it's slavery, but it's also a curse. It's a curse. Not in some weird black magic kind of way. I mean that death is a sign that things are not right with our world. See, according to the Bible, there is a God who made the world. There is a creator. And God created us for life, not for death. God created us to live and to enjoy life. But humanity, as Damola was saying, humanity chose a different way. They chose to walk away from the God of life. And God placed a curse, a punishment on this world. Not because he's some mean, harsh, brutal dictator, but because he's a loving God who said, If you rebel against me, I will punish your wrong. And death is the punishment, the right punishment that God has placed on our world. And so death feels wrong because it is wrong, because it is God's punishment. It's not what we were made for, and yet it is the reality of what we live. That's what we're seeing when we read of Lazarus, this man who died. Pain, slavery, punishment. But then Jesus stands at the tomb and he undoes death. So let's now turn, right, from looking at that shape. Let's now turn to look at this shape, the swoosh. Is it possible? Could you dare to believe that it might be possible that death might lead to life? That's the massive claim of the Bible. And can I say to you, I think all of us, now feel free to disagree, I'd love you to disagree, come and grab me afterwards with some G&Ds and let's talk about this. I think all of us long for this shape. It's sort of hardwired into us. Although we all know life goes this way, there's something in us that wants this. This is the sort of stories that we love, the rags to riches, this shape. This is the shape we love. This is what we're longing. We long for resurrection. That is death to life. That's why people play the lottery, right? What does the lottery offer you? Well, the lottery offers you death to life. It says, I will change your world. I can take you from poverty to riches. That's the shape. This is why people go and stand in front of Simon Cowell, people who clearly can't sing, and yet they think they can sing, and they stand in front of Simon Cowell and they go, I believe I can fly. I believe I can touch the sky. Why do they do it? Why do people humiliate themselves? It's because Simon Cowell has the power of resurrection. Because the stories that are most appealing and the stories that we love are that, I used to stack shelves in Asda. My life was so empty, but now. It's resurrection shape. Everything that we long for is resurrection shape. That is what we want. Could it be that the reason you long for this is because you were made by a God who made you for this? Death to life. But of course, Simon Cowell doesn't really have the power of resurrection. He can't take you from death to life. Just to make that clear, in case anyone's confused. He can temporarily change your situation. But Jesus is claiming something bigger. And this would be good news. And so this move from death to life, there's something that resonates with us. There's something that clicks with a longing within us. But surely this is too good to be true. How can this be? Well, the second thing you need to know about death to life is that only God can do that. That is a God thing. Only God can reverse that move. Only God can reverse the curse. See, I could bring in a brick and put a brick in front of you, and I can't make it live. I can't make something dead come alive. I can't do that. I don't go to the fishmonger and go, poor little fishes, come alive. I don't have the power to go from death to life. I only have the power of life to death. Everything's moving that way. You need God to go that way. So here it is, right? Here comes the claim. The claim is that God, Creator God, the God of life, became a human being. He looked at this world that was in slavery to death, and he said, I want to save it. I want to rescue it. I want to set it free. And so God had this extraordinary plan, this incredible rescue mission, where God himself stepped into this world. He was born as a baby in a manger in Bethlehem. He grew to be a man who was like us, but a man who had the power of life. A man who could stand at the graveside of Lazarus and say, come out, and Lazarus came out. Do you see? That is what we need. But there's something even more than that, which I need to show you. It's not just that Jesus has the power to do it. There was something more that Jesus had to do. In order to be the man who could go take people from death to life, he had to do something else. Do you remember I said that death was a punishment? Well, Jesus needed to deal with that. So actually, here's the staggering claim. Not just that God became a man, but God became a man, and then he died. You see, this story of Lazarus dead in a tomb is all setting up where Jesus is heading. You see, Jesus is going to die and be placed in a tomb. Look, you've got it. Oh, man, it's so difficult to help you to see the bigness of this, the glory of this. God, right, the God of life, he does, he experiences life to death. He experiences the decay. He experiences the agony. He experiences the tears and the sorrow and the suffering and the curse. As Jesus has nails driven through his hands and his feet, and as he's hung up on a cross to die, he's dying under the curse of God, the curse that this world deserves, the curse that I deserve. He came and stepped into my shoes. He came and lived my... And then he smashed his way out of the grave. Because death couldn't hold on to him. Because he's God. And because Jesus is God, death couldn't keep its hold. And Jesus, 3 days after he died, rose. And suddenly you go, there's the swoosh, there's the Nike tick. Yes, he goes down into death, but death cannot keep him. And Jesus smashes his way out of the grave to life, and to life forevermore. But he took the punishment. And because he took the punishment that I deserve, that story now becomes my story. That for anyone who will say to Jesus, would you give me life? He says, yeah, of course I will. So let me just show you one other sentence from this story, if you've still got it open. If you haven't, go back one page to page 68. And hopefully this sentence is going to make a bit more, I hope it makes a bit more sense after all of that. On page 68, this is John 11, verse 25. Look what Jesus says to Martha. Martha says, if only you'd been here. Jesus says in verse 25, I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live even though they die, and whoever lives by believing in me will never die. Do you believe this? Jesus says, I am the very one who has power of death to life. I'm the resurrection. I'm the one who can do it. I'm not Simon Cowell who can just change your situation. I am God who can take you from death to life. And anyone who believes in Jesus will live even though they die. So here is me now, my story now. You know I said to you I was dying? It's not actually true. It's sort of true. Because my story now is that yes, I still live in this world of suffering and this world of death and this world of tears. And one day I will physically die. But Jesus says, whoever believes in me will live even though they die, because death becomes the gateway to me to life. Because Jesus says, that's what I will do for you. I will take you from death to life. My story is no longer life to death. My story is death to life, and that is a freedom that you would not believe. Jesus says to Lazarus, take off his grave clothes and let him go. And Jesus says he wants to come and take off our death and let us go to live. You see, if you are not a Christian, let me just make this as clear as I can. If you are not a Christian, what you are living now, is as good as it will ever get. Because it's all downhill to the grave. It's as good as it will ever get. If you are a Christian, and your story is this shaped, this is as bad as it will ever be. This world. And the suffering that we experience in this world is painful and it hurts. And we've heard about the injustice and we've heard about the pain. But the future is glorious. I don't know if you noticed that as Damola was talking, she kept talking about things being renewed and made new. And every time she said it, she sort of did this with her hand, because you just can't avoid it. You can't avoid the shape. And that's the great promise. The great promise is, yes, you will physically die, but because Jesus has taken the punishment of death, and then he's defeated death, and he's been raised to life, so will you be too. Honestly, this is better than anything. Let me finish with one little story. A few years ago, it was a David Attenborough program, Frozen Planet, and my favorite thing was the woolly bear caterpillar. I don't know if anyone saw this. This is glorious. The woolly bear caterpillar. You know how caterpillars work, right? They've got to eat some stuff, and then they make their cocoon, and then they turn into a butterfly. This is kind of very hungry caterpillar type territory. Anyway, this little caterpillar, it lives in the Arctic, and it eats some stuff in the summer. But then it gets too cold, and there's no food, and it's not ready to turn into a butterfly. So it goes under a rock, and it freezes solid. Blood freezes, gut, everything freezes. And then in the spring, it defrosts and it comes out. And it starts eating again. But it's still not eating enough, so it goes under a rock and freezes again. Next summer, it defrosts and it comes out again. Do you know how long it does that for? Like 14 years. Right, 14 years of eating, freezing, defrosting, eating, freezing, defrosting. Then on the 14th year, it comes out, it eats some stuff, and then suddenly it goes, oh, I think I've had enough. This is it. This is my moment. And it makes its cocoon, and then it comes out of its cocoon, and it's this moth. And do you know how long it gets? 3 days, and then it's dead. 14 years of freezing and defrosting. Then it gets 3 days, and it's got to find a mate, it's got to take her out for dinner, all that sort of stuff, right? 3 days, and then it's dead. And the futility of our lives, the slavery of death, the way that death hangs over us and makes a mockery of us. I beg of you, don't live your life as if you're a woolly bear caterpillar. Don't live your life for that moment when you'll have made it and you'll be a butterfly, because when it's come, it's gone. Jesus stands before you today and he says, I can give you life resurrection life forever. Yes, you will die, but you will live. The one who believes in me will live, even though they die. Do you believe this? There's the question. Do you believe it? That's a question you can't ignore. It's no good saying, well, I'm not sure. That's a rubbish answer. When that much is at stake, to just go, oh, Jesus, I'm not sure. You need to be sure. Either this is true and this is the best news you've ever heard, or it's not true. You can ignore it, eat your G&Ds and go home. But maybe even tonight, for some people here, you're saying, I think that's true. And if that's true, if that's you, I want to invite you tonight to say to Jesus, oh, give me life. Take me from this to this. Jesus, give me life. And you can be sure he'll give you life because he's done it. He rose from the dead himself. Tonight, ask him and he will give you life. It's that simple. Guys, thank you so much for listening. Tomorrow night, we're going to be thinking about we're going to think more about why Jesus had to die. And so I'd love to invite you to come back. If you can't come in person, then catch up on the live stream, catch up on YouTube. If you're on the live stream, why not try and come in person? Why not bring some mates? Let's get this place packed so that we can think about this stuff of Jesus. This is life and death. But thank you for listening.
John T, that was awesome. Thanks, Jonathan. I always get Jonathan to move the table. That's why he sits on that side. All right, all good?
Well, at least I didn't get my mask stuck this time. So. Wow, John T, thank you so much. That hit me hard.
Yeah, definitely. Me too.
Yeah. I would encourage anyone here, those watching, to watch this back. This is the benefit of it being on YouTube is that you zoned out for 5 minutes. There's no excuse. You can go back and watch it again. Even if you want to, you can skip past me and Grace's banter. But watch the talk again. Yeah.
But Jonathan, let's say there's some people here. Maybe they were brought along by a friend. Maybe they just saw the talk title and thought that looked really interesting. But after John T's talk, and after Damola spoke, what if they want to find out a little bit more? Maybe they've got some questions.
Well, first of all, Known isn't finished. We have 2 more days of Known. Hooray. There we go. We have 2 more days of Known, so make sure to come along on Thursday and Friday, or watch it back on the live stream. And then even after that, Known isn't finished. We've got a video about the search. Great. And as you saw there, the search will be on every Monday back at Costa Coffee. Come along, free coffee, free tea, free cake, whole hour of discussion.
What more could you want?
That's the stuff.
So we're back in Costa on the 17th of May, but next week, so this Monday and Tuesday, we'll be in people's gardens with marshmallows, fire pits, hot chocolate. Super cute.
That's what we love to see.
So, yeah.
If you want to get updates about the search, really easy. Just text 88802. Text the word search to 88802. I said it was really easy and then messed it up. Once again, search to 88802. In fact, we'll give you 30 seconds to do that now. And whilst we do that, we got a little question for you guys. Me and Grace had a little debate earlier about the G&D's ice cream. It's the sorbet and the ice cream. Is sorbet ice cream? Do we prefer the sorbet or the ice cream?
Not this again. Once he asked me a superfood and he got quite passionate, so.
Soup is not a food. But anyway. Sorbet. Would you rather have the Oreo ice cream or the mango sorbet? I'm an Oreo ice cream man.
I'm a mango sorbet kind of gal.
if you're on the live stream, you can put this in the chat. But for the people in the room, you're all texting about the search, of course, but take one hand up if you're in favor of Oreo ice cream. Ooh.
I think I'm outnumbered.
And one hand for mango.
Yes, come on. Yes, dream team.
I think that's a win for me. Yeah, well, that do be how it goes. Anyway, feel free to go and grab some sorbet or Oreo ice cream or other things. Dame bar ice cream, which I learned about
I've heard
today.
it's good. I've heard good things. Also, Jonty and Damola will be around afterwards, so if you've got questions for them, if you'd love to have a chat with them, do go and do that. And if you came with a friend or you're watching the live stream with a friend right now, do chat to them about what you found interesting. And yeah, keep the conversation going. And if there's stuff on your chair, feel free to take it with you. That's a gift. And yeah, help yourself to free ice cream. Stay in your seat. The stewards will come and tell you when you can leave. And you'll leave out that door.
Thanks for coming.
See you guys soon.